another hot topic for our discussions, and there have been a few over the last few weeks for sure, is this whole idea that I guess a few days ago now, Prime Minister announced a cut in HST and GST on certain products that we buy, or if we go to restaurants, we won't have to pay GST, HST. He also announced the $250 rebate check that will come in the springtime to those that worked in 2023 and had an income of less than $150,000. Sounds pretty good. I know for some, they were a little upset by this. One of the groups that I guess was most upset were seniors, right? Seniors don't work, and therefore we're exempt from this $250 rebate check. We've definitely heard from seniors, and I know the Prime Minister has addressed it, saying that he does a lot for seniors, and this was to focus on a different segment of the population. But seniors definitely were not happy. Also, retailers, small retailers, small businesses, mom and pop shops, what are they going to do with this new removal of GST, HST? Their point of sale, their cash registers, however they actually charge the consumer when he comes into the store, they're now going to have to, I guess, update their software to not charge the HST, GST. And then 2 months from now, they're going to have to adjust once again. What are the costs involved in updating their point of sale software? So I know they had some rumblings there as well. And I guess overall, there's been a lot of talk from economists, and we actually have a couple of quotes I'll get to in a second. We can show the first one. They're talking about how the actual rebate check is going to have more of an effect on the economy than the HST, GST removal will. It could spur on more spending, which could spur on a little bit more inflation in the months of February and March. And the removal of HST and GST actually could bring down inflation initially. So it's bring down inflation, and inflation may go a little bit higher in the springtime when those checks get sent out. But the effects will probably be, as most people believe, very temporary. We could see GDP go up a little bit because of what's going to happen, and then come right back down once again, because we know that growth in our country, as we've seen on the charts just a few segments ago, has been very, very low. And the other thing that I've been hearing about from some merchants, some retail shops, is that this HST, GST a removal of it doesn't take place until after December 15th. So does that mean that people are going to prolong their buying for the holidays? Are they going to push out their buying to after December 15th? If you do that, you're only leaving yourself 9 or 10 days before the holidays. So is there just going to be this massive retail spending crunch the last 10 days before Christmas? So a lot there to parse through, and a couple of commentaries here. And the first one is from Doug Porter, chief economist of the Bank of Montreal. And he says it's important to point out just how meaty this is. It's quite a substantial move, and it's important to note that the much bigger impact here will not be the HST, the high-profile GST holiday, HST holiday. It's more about the rebate checks. And when you combine the rebate checks with the provincial rebate checks that, for example, province of Ontario is also sending out, Doug Porter says the money is likely to offer a significant boost to incomes and consumer spending at the start of the year. This is now actually working in the same direction as the Bank of Canada, and it's going to be relatively short-lived. We could get some pretty mild inflation reading in December and January, and then a kind of a nudge back higher in February and March. So there you have it. Economist Doug Porter from Bank of Montreal talking about the effects of what the Federal Reserve is, not Federal Reserve, federal government is proposing. A second quote here is by Royce Mendez, and he is from the head of macro strategy at Desjardins, managing director and head of macro strategy, said that the sales tax exemption will mechanically lower inflation, but the Bank of Canada will look beyond that. Central bankers will be more interested with the impacts on growth and underlying price pressures. The announcement should all but close the door to a 50 basis point cut next month. So he's maintaining that the Bank of Canada will probably just go a quarter basis point. That 50 basis points is no longer on the table for when they meet and announce their interest rate policy in December. So are these going to have a positive effect, these two announcements, for all of us? I think they can, but I think it's going to be short-lived. And I know in talking to tax strategists, to accountants, speaking to others in government, we much rather see a longer-term solution to taxes. Cutting HST, GST, in my opinion, isn't going to cut it. We need to lower income tax, especially if they're going to lower income tax down in the U.S. With this new administration, especially if they're going to cut red tape and remove a lot of the regulatory issues that the current government is facing down in the U.S. So get rid of some of the regulatory issues and cut taxes. That's going to spur on growth in the United States. We need to be as aggressive as they are. We need to cut taxes. And, we've heard rumblings that from the Conservatives that if they were to take over next year, that they would definitely look at cutting taxes going forward. So to me, cutting taxes, a lot longer term solution to the problem and a better solution to the problem than just giving out checks and cutting or removing the GST, HST for a couple of months.